There are fleeting moments that seem ordinary, almost insignificant. A young, impoverished man rushing to the most important job interview of his life. A successful woman panicked in a parking lot after having her purse snatched. They don't know each other. They come from two different worlds. But in that split second, he chose to stop. Not for recognition, not for reward, simply because it was the right thing to do. He knew that choice could cost him his one and only shot. What he didn't know was that it would also be the key to a door no one saw coming. And that woman wasn't just a victim of a robbery. She was the one who held the power to decide his future. A single act of kindness, an unexpected turning point, and a journey upward, beginning in the very place it seemed to end. This isn't a fairy tale. This is the story of Malcolm Reed. Late afternoon in San Francisco, a salty ocean breeze drifted between the glass towers, carrying with it the distant blare of car horns and the chill of early evening. Malcolm Reed, 27 years old, dressed in a cheap dress shirt, worn sneakers, and clutching a job application folder, was hurrying across the back parking lot of an office building. Today mattered. It was his interview at Crescent Dynamics, the prestigious tech company he had dreamed of joining for years. Malcolm had prepared everything: a polished resume, well-rehearsed answers, and a small hope that someone would finally look past his zip code or his scuffed shoes and see his ability. He had 20 minutes left, just enough time to head inside, tidy up, and enter the interview room with a mask of confidence. But then, a scream shattered the moment. "Stop, please, stop!" Just a few dozen yards away, a brunette woman in a white blazer was chasing after a thief who had just ripped her handbag from her shoulder. The man darted through the parking lot like a shadow, fast, reckless. The woman stumbled but kept running, her voice panicked and raw. Malcolm froze. Every instinct screamed at him to turn away. He didn't have time. He had already missed this interview once. This might be his only shot. But the look in that woman's eyes, desperate, terrified, Malcolm couldn't ignore that. Without thinking, he dropped his folder to the ground and sprinted toward the thief. "Hey, stop!" Malcolm shouted, his legs pumping hard. The thief glanced back, smirked, and cut toward the corner of the lot, thinking he'd lost his pursuer. But what he didn't know was, Malcolm wasn't just running after him. He was chasing his future. Minutes later, a security guard rushed over after hearing the commotion and found Malcolm pinning the thief to the pavement, one hand gripping the stolen handbag. His shirt clung to his back with sweat, his hands scraped from the fall, but his eyes were sharp, unwavering. The woman caught up, breathless, face pale from shock, yet somehow managing to speak. "That bag. It has all my contracts, my company's entire business plan." Malcolm handed the bag to her, giving a small nod. "Here, I figured it was important." She looked up at him, eyes wide with disbelief and emotion. For the first time that day, she truly saw him. Not the wrinkled shirt, not the exhaustion, but the person behind it all. Malcolm bent down to pick up his now creased folder. He checked his watch. Too late. Without another word, he turned and walked away in silence. And Isabel Hartman, executive vice president of Crescent Dynamics, could only stand there, clutching the bag he had returned, watching the stranger disappear into the distance. She didn't know his name, but she knew this for certain. Today, someone gave up everything, just to help a stranger. The morning sun filtered gently through the worn-out curtains of a small apartment on the third floor of an old building in South San Francisco. Malcolm sat quietly at the edge of his bed, eyes locked on the glowing screen of his phone. "Thank you for your interest. However, the position has been filled." The notification had popped up just 2 minutes ago from Crescent Dynamics. It wasn't exactly a surprise. He had arrived more than 20 minutes late. His resume was crumpled, his shirt drenched in sweat, and the cut on his forehead from yesterday's fall still throbbed. Even if he had made it into the interview room, Malcolm knew he wouldn't have left a great impression. With a sigh, he gently tossed the phone onto the bed. But the heaviness in his chest wasn't just about failure. It was that gnawing feeling of having lost his one shot. He didn't regret stopping to help that woman. But reality was still staring him down. The fridge was empty, rent was due in 5 days, and there wasn't a single name in his contacts he could lean on. A soft breeze drifted through the open window. Malcolm stood up, walked to his desk, and reached for his laptop, ready to start scouring for more temp gigs. But just then, his phone buzzed, a number he didn't recognize, no name. He hesitated, then answered. "Hello?" A calm but commanding female voice responded, "Is this Malcolm Reed?" Malcolm froze. That voice, it was familiar. "This is Isabel Hartman. I believe we met yesterday. In the parking lot." His heart jumped. Malcolm tightened his grip on the phone, trying to steady his voice. "Yes, I remember you." There was a brief silence. Then Isabel spoke again, directly, without hesitation. "I'd like to meet you, today. Crescent Dynamics headquarters, 32nd floor." Malcolm blinked, caught off guard. "You work there?" "I run it," she said simply, "and I want to talk to the man who gave up his opportunity, to help a complete stranger." Then she hung up. Malcolm stood still, stunned. Still holding the phone, he stared at the dark screen. And in the quiet of that small apartment, his heart didn't just pound. It whispered something louder. Maybe that door isn't closed after all. Malcolm had never set foot in a place like the headquarters of Crescent Dynamics. The building soared in the heart of San Francisco like a monument of glass and steel. He walked down granite-tiled hallways, every footstep echoing, cold, efficient, and completely foreign from the world he lived in every day. The elevator chimed and stopped at the 32nd floor. As the doors slid open, a poised assistant in a black suit stepped forward, her tone crisp. "Mr. Reed, please follow me. The executive vice president is expecting you." Malcolm gave a small nod, his heart pounding for reasons he couldn't quite explain. He had no idea what waited behind those doors, but he felt the gravity in every step, every glance. A pane of frosted glass slid open. The EVP's office, spacious, minimalist, but undeniably commanding. A wall of windows framed the sweeping city skyline, and standing there and with her back to him was Isabel Hartman. She wore a charcoal grey suit, her frame slender yet radiating the energy of someone used to making decisions that changed lives. When she turned around, the exhaustion in her eyes from yesterday was gone. In its place, sharp clarity, and something else, trust. "I see you came," she said. Not a question, a statement. Malcolm gave a slow nod. "I still don't know why you asked me here, but I'm guessing it's not just to say thank you for yesterday." Isabel smiled, not politely, but with a quiet sincerity. "Exactly. Yesterday I wasn't just helped, I learned something. You were on your way to change your own life, and you still stopped to help a stranger." She walked over to her desk and pulled out a folder. "I want to offer you another chance, not out of pity, but because someone like you deserves to be somewhere better." Malcolm froze. He looked down at the open contract in front of him. It was a real position, not an internship, not a trial, a job offer with a salary higher than anything he'd ever dared to dream. "I've never worked in a place like this," he admitted quietly. Isabel looked him straight in the eye, her voice calm but firm. "I don't need a flawless resume. I need someone who chooses what's right, even when it costs them everything." The room fell silent. Malcolm looked down at the pen in his hand. And then he signed his name. With that single stroke, a brand new life began. Day 1 at Crescent Dynamics. Malcolm Reed stepped into the offices on the 27th floor, the Strategic Analysis Department, where he would officially begin his new journey as a full-time employee. Not an intern, not a trainee, but that didn't mean he was welcomed. From the moment he was introduced to the team, a few glances cut through him, quick but cold. Handshakes that were limp, smiles that didn't reach the eyes, and thinly veiled questions soaked in suspicion. So, where did you transfer from? Huh, I didn't see your name in the formal recruitment rounds. No one knew he had been handpicked by EVP Isabel Hartman herself. And if they did suspect it, the scrutiny only sharpened. The team had 8 people. 6 of them were graduates of elite universities, armed with MBAs, fellowships, and resumes thicker than Malcolm's entire life story. Malcolm, a man who had come up through delivery gigs, warehouse shifts, and waiting tables, not a single day spent behind a corporate desk. And they could feel that. The team lead, a sharp-jawed man named Eric, dropped a thick binder on Malcolm's desk, his voice half joking, half warning. "Welcome to Crescent. Here, you either swim or sink." The room erupted in polite laughter. Malcolm just smiled, took the binder and walked to his desk. He didn't argue. He didn't ask for sympathy. He knew exactly where he stood. And more importantly, he knew why he was chosen. All day, Malcolm buried himself in the materials, studying the processes, making detailed notes, trying to decode the industry jargon and tangled graphs no one had explained. No one offered help. No one showed him the ropes. During lunch, as the team gathered to chat and ordered food from an upscale Italian place across the street, Malcolm pulled out a modest homemade meal from a Tupperware container. Someone glanced over, smirked slightly, then turned away. But Malcolm didn't care. "This is the opportunity I almost lost," he reminded himself, "and I won't let anyone take it from me again." As the evening settled and the office emptied, Malcolm remained at his desk, the only light left shining on a small pool of papers and a tired but focused face. No more whispers, no more looks, just him. And the quiet fire inside to prove that no matter where you start, you can still be someone worth betting on. The first week passed in silence, but it was far from peaceful. Malcolm Reed still arrived earliest and left last. He learned fast, worked meticulously. There was nothing anyone could criticize outright. But in meetings, in casual discussions, in team threads, he was always on the outside. Then came Friday. Eric, the team lead, walked over and dropped a presentation file with over 40 slides on Malcolm's desk, his voice cool and casual. "Strategic meeting prep for Monday morning. Isabel will be there. This one's yours." Malcolm froze. A strategy meeting, presenting to the executive board. He opened the file. It was a market analysis for East Asia, a region he hadn't even been briefed on before. High complexity, heavy financial modeling, deep algorithmic interpretation. "No one even told me about this," Malcolm said quietly. Eric shrugged. "That's how it works here. Opportunities show up unannounced. Think of it as your chance to shine." The others chuckled. Malcolm took the file and walked back to his desk. Something twisted in his gut. This wasn't just an assignment. This was a test, a trap maybe. One he'd either rise above or be buried by. That weekend, Malcolm barely slept. No more than 4 hours a night. He read, he remodeled, he rewrote every slide, he broke down complex algorithms, rebuilt the charts, revised every note, every visual. At times his hands trembled, his eyes blurred, but he kept going. Because this wasn't just a presentation. This was a fight to be seen, a fight to matter. Monday morning, Malcolm stepped into the executive boardroom on the 35th floor. More than 10 senior leaders were already seated. Isabel Hartman was among them, deep in conversation. She didn't even glance in his direction. Eric motioned for Malcolm to sit, in the far corner. Not a greeting, not a word. Moments later, Eric stood and addressed the room. Before we begin the main session, one of our newer team members will be sharing insights on East Asia, just a small pilot segment for the expansion initiative. He said it like it was a formality, like it didn't matter. Then he turned to Malcolm. "You're up." Malcolm took a deep breath and stepped forward. The first slide appeared. The room fell silent. He began to speak, slowly, clearly, no theatrics, just data, reason, and understanding. He walked them through the macroeconomic context, regional volatility factors, and both short-term and long-term recommendations. Not a word wasted. When he finished, the room stayed quiet. Eric smirked, about to interject, but Isabel set her folder down and looked directly at Malcolm. "Who helped you prepare this?" Malcolm met her eyes. "No one. I did it myself." A moment of stillness. Then a voice from the end of the table murmured, "Impressive, concise, different." Isabel didn't say anything at first, but her gaze lingered, and this time there was surprise in her eyes, and a hint of something else. Pride. After the meeting, as the boardroom emptied, Eric brushed past Malcolm, his voice cold and clipped. "Not everyone makes it past their first trial. Watch your step." Malcolm only smiled faintly, because he knew they still didn't accept him. But now, they couldn't ignore him. The following week, Malcolm was assigned a new task: prepare the input data analysis for a major international partnership proposal. It wasn't glamorous, but it was critical, directly tied to cash flow and investment decisions. He worked on it until 2 a.m., 4 nights in a row, every number triple-checked, every chart tested for formatting. By the end, Malcolm felt confident. This time it would be perfect. But it wasn't. That morning, during the project status meeting, the big screen lit up with the presentation, and the numbers were all wrong. Mismatched figures, broken graphs, entire sections were blank. No one said anything, but the room turned icy cold. A voice finally cut through the silence. "Is this your data?" It was the project director, his tone flat, eyes fixed on Malcolm. Malcolm stood slowly, throat dry. I triple-checked everything before submitting." Eric, the team lead who had approved the final submission, shrugged casually. "I just forwarded what you sent me, didn't touch a thing." The floor beneath Malcolm felt like it was tilting. He knew the file he submitted was clean, so someone must have changed it. He stayed silent the rest of the meeting, absorbing every cold glance, every silent judgment. Isabel Hartman didn't say a word. Arms crossed, her expression unreadable, like a still lake hiding an unpredictable current. That evening, Malcolm went straight to Ava, Isabel's assistant, and one of the few people with full access to the system's back-end. "I need to know who modified the file I submitted last Wednesday." Ava looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. She sat down, opened her laptop, and started typing. After a few quick keystrokes, a single name appeared on screen: Jared Whitman, a senior analyst in finance. The same man who once said, loud enough for the whole floor to hear, "We can't just let anyone rise too fast, or it dilutes the whole brand." Malcolm's jaw clenched. It was a setup, a deliberate sabotage, a calculated move to make him fall, quietly, without a fight, so they could push him out with a clean explanation. That night, Malcolm sat in silence on the small balcony of his apartment. The city below glittered like stars fallen to earth, but he didn't feel their light. This wasn't the first time he'd been boxed out, dismissed, set up, but he truly believed this place would be different. That merit would mean something here. Maybe he'd been wrong. He reached for his laptop, ready to draft a resignation letter. But then, a voice echoed in his memory. Isabel's voice from that very first meeting. "I don't need a perfect resume. I need someone who chooses to do the right thing, even when it costs them everything." Malcolm closed his eyes, then opened them again. sharper, clearer. He typed into the search bar, extract internal file modification logs, Crescent Dynamics. If they wanted to bring him down like this, they'd have to answer to evidence, and this time he wouldn't go quietly. The next morning, Malcolm arrived at the office earlier than ever. He wore a crisp white shirt, his tie perfectly knotted. His expression was calm, focused, every breath measured, every step deliberate. In his hand, he carried a printed log report, detailed documentation from Crescent Dynamics' internal system, timestamps, access records, and the final editor's name, Jared Whitman. And this time, he didn't come alone. "I need to speak to Vice President Hartman immediately," Malcolm said to Ava at the reception desk. Ava looked up, surprised for a moment, then nodded and went to knock on Isabel's office. 1 minute later, the door slid open. Isabel Hartman stood by the window, as usual, but this time she turned around and looked directly into Malcolm's eyes. "You have something to say?" Malcolm stepped forward and placed the printed log on her desk. "Regarding the altered report from yesterday, I checked the system logs. This is everything I found." Isabel flipped through the pages in silence until she saw the name, Jared Whitman. Her eyes narrowed. "Are you certain?" she asked, her voice low, sharp. Malcolm nodded. "I'm not here to complain or point fingers, but if I'm being judged for something I didn't do, then I have to make it right." Isabel stayed silent for a few more seconds. Then she picked up the papers and pressed a button on her internal phone. "Bring Jared to the conference room, now." 15 minutes later, conference room, floor 32. Jared walked in, wearing his usual grey suit, radiating confidence. But when he saw Isabel holding a file and Malcolm sitting at the table, something flickered in his eyes. A flicker of caution. "Is there a problem?" he asked, glancing between them. Isabel said nothing at first. She simply slid the document across the table toward him. "You know what this is, don't you?" Jared glanced down, his lips tightened. I'm not sure who—" "Don't lie," Isabel cut in, voice razor-sharp. "The data shows you were the last person to edit that file. 2 a.m. Wednesday, 7 changes, all of them altering or damaging the original content." Silence. The air grew still. Jared wiped his forehead, despite the room's cool temperature. I only meant to adjust a few charts. For clarity." Isabel slammed her hand on the table. It was the first time she'd ever lost composure in front of her team. "That report was for the board of directors, and you tampered with it, to make someone else look incompetent." Jared swallowed hard, his face turned pale. Malcolm sat still, but inside he felt no anger anymore, just relief. The truth had found its voice. Isabel rose to her feet, her expression unreadable. "Jared, clear your desk. HR will handle the rest." He didn't respond. He simply stood, face frozen, and walked out. With just the two of them left, Isabel looked at Malcolm for a long moment. Then finally she spoke, quietly but with weight. "I trusted you, and today, you gave me one more reason to keep doing so." Malcolm didn't reply with words. He simply nodded, a quiet, firm gesture of resolve. Not pride, not vengeance, just conviction. Isabel turned back to the window, her voice calm again. "Do you know why I didn't defend you yesterday?" Malcolm didn't answer. "Because I wanted to see what you would do, when cornered. And today you answered me, with evidence, with restraint, without playing victim." She turned back around, and this time a smile ghosted across her lips. "Good, very good." 1 week later, Malcolm walked down the 32nd floor corridor in a well-fitted suit, a sleek new nameplate gleaming on his chest. Malcolm Reed, Strategic Operations Lead. No more suspicious stares, no more hushed whispers behind his back. Now every person he passed greeted him with a respectful nod, as if they had always known, as if the quiet man who once walked in unnoticed was now an irreplaceable part of the engine that kept everything moving. That afternoon, Isabel called Malcolm up to her office, but this time it wasn't about a report or a last-minute meeting. On her desk sat an envelope. She slid it toward him. Internal Excellence Fund. Just a small grant to help you start again, this time the way you deserve. Malcolm opened it. Inside was a housing allowance, enough to move into a place near the city centre. And beside it, an invitation to join the executive delegation on next month's European business trip. He was stunned. Looking up, his voice faltered slightly. I don't know how to thank you." Isabel gave a soft shake of her head. "You don't owe me anything. That door opened because you chose to do the right thing, even when it could have cost you everything." She paused, her expression gentler now. "As for me, I simply realized something. The people worth trusting rarely arrive at the perfect moment, but they're always the right ones." That night, Malcolm stood at the doorway of his new apartment, warm, bright, and quiet. He pulled out his phone and called his mom. "I'm okay now, Ma." "No, better than okay. I finally found the place I belong." Outside the window, the city sparkled like a sky full of stars. In the distance, the Crescent Dynamics headquarters glowed like a lighthouse through the night. And Malcolm Reed, the man who once had to count his coins before buying shoes, was now someone who could walk through any door he chose because he earned the key himself. Some opportunities never come twice, but some people, when they choose what's right, open doors far bigger than they ever imagined. Malcolm wasn't chosen for a perfect resume or an elite degree. He was chosen because, in a moment that mattered, he chose kindness over personal gain. Thank you for watching to the end of this story. If you too believe that doing the right thing can change a life, subscribe to join us on more journeys like this one. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the next chapter, where every character carries a quiet but powerful lesson. And if you've ever been underestimated, don't worry, you might just be in the first chapter of your own extraordinary story.